Have you ever wondered why smart, kind, and well-intentioned people can see the world so differently, arguing over politics, religion, or values with such intensity that it divides families, teams, and entire nations? What if the root of this conflict isn't ignorance or bad character, but something deeper, something wired into our psychology? Welcome to a journey of self-discovery. Because when you understand how the human mind works, you unlock the power to lead. Not just others, but yourself. Welcome to the Leadership Code, your trusted space for personal growth, leadership mastery, and meaningful transformation. This is more than just another video. It's the beginning of a mindset shift. In The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, renowned moral psychologist Jonathan Haidt challenges us to see morality not as a set of cold rules or rigid ideologies, but as an emotional, intuitive force that shapes every decision, every belief, and every argument we make. This book isn't about taking sides. It's about understanding why sides exist in the first place. It's about learning to lead with compassion and conviction by mastering the inner workings of our own moral compass. When you begin to see how your intuition, emotions, and social influences shape your thinking, something powerful happens. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop judging and start connecting. You become the kind of leader this divided world desperately needs. Jonathan Haidt is one of the world's leading voices in moral psychology. With decades of groundbreaking research, he's helped millions understand why good people clash, and how we can bridge those gaps with wisdom, humility, and emotional intelligence. His work has reshaped how leaders, educators, and changemakers think about influence, ethics, and community, and it's more relevant now than ever. Why this book matters today. We're living in a time of information overload, emotional reactivity, and constant polarization. In workplaces, families, and even within ourselves. But this book is a reminder. Division isn't destiny. When we develop self-awareness, cultivate empathy, and understand the deeper psychological roots of conflict, we don't just survive complex conversations, we lead them. This is your edge as a leader. Not just knowing what's right, but understanding why others believe what they do, and how to build bridges without losing your voice. What you'll gain. Stick with this full summary, and you'll gain insights that can improve your leadership presence, deepen your emotional intelligence, help you resolve conflicts with clarity, strengthen your communication and influence, and most importantly, transform the way you think, feel, and lead in a divided world. And if you're serious about personal growth, don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Code. We release powerful book summaries and leadership lessons every week, so you can grow, lead, and transform with each new episode. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an insight. Let's begin this journey of moral clarity, self-awareness, and leadership transformation. Part 1. Intuitions come first, strategic reasoning second. Chapter 1. Where does morality come from? Where does our sense of right and wrong actually come from? Is it something we're born with, or something we're taught? In this powerful opening chapter, Jonathan Haidt takes us deep into one of the oldest debates in philosophy and psychology, the origin of morality. He presents 3 classic answers. 1. Nativism, the idea that we're born with a moral sense already inside us. 2. Empiricism, the belief that morality comes only from experience, especially from culture and teaching. 3. Rationalism, the claim that kids figure out morality on their own through reason and thinking. But here's where Haidt challenges conventional wisdom. He introduces a different, more accurate approach, the social intuitionist model. He argues that morality is primarily intuitive, not rational. We feel first, then justify our feelings with reasoning later. In other words, our minds are like a press secretary, explaining and defending decisions that our emotions already made. To make this real, Haidt uses a simple but brilliant example. A brother and sister go on a vacation. They decide, just once, to sleep together, consensually, safely, and privately. No one is harmed. Yet almost everyone reacts with instant moral disgust. When asked why it's wrong, people struggle to explain. This shows us something crucial. Our moral reactions are emotional and intuitive first. We reach for justifications only after the feeling has arrived. Haidt's lesson is clear. To become better leaders, better communicators, and better people, we must first understand how deeply emotional and automatic our moral judgments are. If you want to influence others, or understand why people disagree so fiercely, you must learn to speak to the intuition, not just the intellect. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If morality begins with intuition, then where do those intuitions come from? And how can we learn to see through the lens of others who feel differently than us? Chapter 2. The Intuitive Dog and Its Rational Tail. Imagine a dog wagging its tail. Now imagine the tail trying to wag the dog. That's the metaphor Jonathan Haidt uses to explain how our moral reasoning works. In reality, our intuition is the dog, and reasoning is just the tail, following along, trying to explain what the dog has already decided. In this chapter, Haidt dives deeper into his central idea. Moral judgments are made quickly and intuitively. Reasoning comes afterward, not to discover the truth, but to justify what we already feel. He challenges the long-standing idea, especially popular in Western philosophy, that people use logic to figure out right from wrong. Instead, Haidt shows through research and experiments that our reasoning is often post hoc, after the fact. We're not truth seekers. We're lawyers, building a case for what we already believe. A key study he cites, when participants were asked about a morally questionable but harmless scenario, like a man buying a chicken at the store, using it for sexual purposes in private, and then cooking it for dinner, most people instantly reacted with moral disgust. But when pressed to explain why it was wrong, they struggled to give logical reasons. This phenomenon is what Haidt calls moral dumbfounding. People feel strongly, even when they can't explain why. So what's the leadership lesson here? Leaders often assume that better arguments or more data will win people over. But this chapter teaches us that human beings don't operate on reason alone. We are creatures of instinct, guided by intuition, emotion, and social context. To truly lead, we must learn to speak to the heart, not just the head. If you want to inspire change, whether in teams, families, or society, don't start with arguments. Start with understanding. People don't change their minds when you defeat them with logic. They shift when they feel heard, respected, and emotionally safe. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If our reasoning is just a servant to our intuition, what shapes those intuitions in the first place? Where do they come from? And why do they differ so dramatically across cultures and political ideologies? In the next chapter, we'll explore the psychological roots of intuition and how understanding them can transform the way you lead and connect with others. Chapter 3. Elephants Rule. What if you're not really in charge of your mind? In this eye-opening chapter, Jonathan Haidt deepens his powerful metaphor of the rider and the elephant, where the rider represents our conscious reasoning and the elephant represents our automatic, intuitive reactions. Here's the truth. The rider thinks he's steering the elephant, but most of the time, it's the elephant, our intuition, that's in control. The rider's job? Not to lead, but to rationalize where the elephant already decided to go. This isn't just a metaphor. It's grounded in cognitive science and moral psychology. Haidt explores how our brains are wired to make snap moral judgments based on emotion and intuition. Logic kicks in later, mostly to explain or defend those judgments. A key lesson for leaders and communicators. Reasoning alone rarely changes minds. If the elephant isn't moved, no amount of clever arguments will work. But there's hope, because while the rider may be weak, it's not useless. The rider can learn to train the elephant over time, especially through relationships, stories, and social influence. Haidt gives the example of how people often change political or moral views not through debate, but through emotional experiences or personal connections, like having a friend from a marginalized group or hearing a powerful story. This chapter teaches us that moral influence happens not through confrontation, but through connection. As a leader, you're not just guiding minds, you're guiding elephants. And elephants respond best to empathy, example, and emotional intelligence. If you want to move people, speak to what they feel, not just what they think. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If the elephant rules our moral world, then what shapes the elephant? What drives our intuitions and moral instincts at the deepest level? In the next chapter, we'll explore how evolution, not just culture or reason, has shaped our moral minds in ways that still guide our lives today. Chapter 4. Vote for me. Here's why. Have you ever met someone who seemed to believe their own excuses, even when they were clearly in the wrong? In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt dives into one of the most fascinating truths about human nature. We're not designed to be objective truth seekers. We're designed to be persuasive advocates, especially when defending ourselves. Haidt builds on the rider and elephant metaphor by showing that our conscious reasoning often acts like a press secretary or a campaign manager. Its job? To justify our actions, protect our image, and win approval from others. It's not, I did this because it's right. It's more like, I did this. Now let me explain why it was right. Haidt calls this the reasoning is for reputation model. We're wired to promote ourselves to others, just like a politician giving a speech. Vote for me. Here's why I'm great. Ignore the flaws. This explains why group discussions often don't lead to deeper understanding. Instead of seeking truth, people try to score points, defend their tribe, or outshine others. But here's the twist. We're surprisingly good at spotting flaws in other people's arguments, but terrible at seeing the same flaws in our own. Haidt calls this the confirmation bias plus motivated reasoning combo, a deadly trap for leaders and decision-makers. Great leaders don't just sharpen their arguments. They cultivate intellectual humility. They ask, am I trying to be right or trying to understand? True growth happens when we stop campaigning and start listening. If we want to make better decisions and build stronger teams, we must learn to question our own reasoning as critically as we question others. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If reasoning is built more for persuasion than for truth, then how did morality evolve in the first place? What role did cooperation, reputation, and survival play in shaping our moral instincts? Join us in Part 2, Chapter 5, as we uncover the evolutionary roots of morality and what they reveal about the way we live and lead today. Thanks for listening. If you're finding value in this audiobook summary, make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Code, where we help you lead with purpose and live with gratitude. Part 2. There's more to morality than harm and fairness. Chapter 5. Beyond Weird Morality. What if your idea of morality isn't universal? What if it's just weird? In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt introduces a powerful concept that challenges everything we assume about human morality. Weird stands for people who are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And most psychological studies, including those on morality, have been conducted on this narrow population. Here's the shocking insight. Weird people, like many of us, see morality primarily through the lens of individual rights, fairness, and personal freedom. But in most cultures around the world, morality includes much more than that. It's also about loyalty to the group, respect for authority, and maintaining sacred traditions. Haidt shares research from his work in places like Brazil and India, where moral judgments go beyond harm or fairness. For example, many people condemn behaviors like disrespecting elders or violating purity norms, even if no one is physically harmed. This reveals something crucial. Morality is not just about protecting individuals. It's also about binding groups together. Weird morality is unusual, not universal. So, if you're a leader trying to influence across cultures or even across political lines, you must understand that others may be using a different moral language altogether. True leadership requires cultural and moral humility. If you judge others using only your own values, you'll create distance instead of connection. But if you learn to recognize and respect diverse moral foundations, you become a bridge builder in a divided world. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If there's more to morality than harm and fairness, then what are the other foundations that shape how people judge right from wrong? In the next chapter, we'll uncover 6 powerful moral foundations that explain almost every moral belief, conflict, and culture clash around the world. Chapter 6. Taste buds of the righteous mind. What if morality is like taste? In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt introduces a powerful metaphor. Morality is like a tongue with multiple taste receptors. Just like we all have different preferences for sweet, sour, salty, and bitter, our minds also respond to different moral flavors. Through years of research across cultures and political ideologies, Haidt and his colleagues identified 6 moral foundations, 6 psychological systems that shape how we experience right and wrong. 1. Care versus harm. Compassion and protecting others from suffering. 2. Fairness versus cheating, justice, equality, and reciprocity. 3. Loyalty versus betrayal, standing with your group or nation. 4. Authority versus subversion, respect for tradition and legitimate hierarchy. 5. Sanctity versus degradation, avoiding impurity, reverence for sacred things. 6. Liberty versus oppression, resisting domination, and valuing individual freedom. These foundations are the moral taste buds of the human mind, and while we all have them, we don't use them equally. For example, a people who lean liberal tend to prioritize care, fairness, and liberty. Those who lean conservative tend to draw from all 6 foundations more evenly, especially loyalty, authority, and sanctity. The key insight? Moral diversity is real, and it's wired into us. If you're only appealing to 1 or 2 foundations, you're not speaking the full moral language your audience may respond to. Haidt compares moral foundations to the palate of a chef. The more foundations you understand and use, the richer and more satisfying your leadership and communication can become. To lead effectively across differences, you must become fluent in more than just your own moral instincts. The best leaders, like the best chefs, understand how to blend the full range of moral flavors to connect, inspire, and unify. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If we're all born with these 6 moral taste buds, then how do they develop? What shapes which ones we use? And how our environment, culture, and upbringing influence our moral identity? In the next chapter, we'll explore how our experiences shape our righteous mind, and why that matters for leadership in a divided world. Chapter 7. The Moral Foundations of Politics. Why do liberals and conservatives seem to live in completely different moral worlds? In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt applies the 6 moral foundations introduced earlier to the world of politics, helping us understand why political ideologies clash, and why both sides often fail to understand one another. Here's what he found. Liberals and conservatives are not just arguing about facts or policies, they're speaking different moral languages. Liberals tend to prioritize care, fairness, as equality, and liberty against oppression. Their moral lens is focused on protecting individuals, especially the vulnerable. Conservatives, by contrast, value all 6 foundations, especially loyalty, authority, and sanctity. Their moral framework also includes preserving social order, tradition, and group cohesion. This means that while a liberal might be outraged by injustice or inequality, a conservative might be more concerned about disrespect for authority or breakdowns in loyalty and moral order. Haidt emphasizes, neither side is immoral. They're moral in different ways. He uses vivid examples from American politics to show how politicians craft messages that activate different moral foundations. For instance, a conservative ad might appeal to patriotism and religious values, loyalty and sanctity, while a liberal message might focus on compassion and fairness. But here's the problem. Each side assumes their morality is the only real one, which leads to misunderstanding, judgment, and polarization. As a leader in today's divided world, it's not enough to speak your truth. You must also understand the moral foundations of others. Whether you're leading a diverse team, engaging in political discourse, or building community, you become a more powerful communicator when you stop debating and start translating. True leadership requires moral empathy, the ability to hear not just the words people say, but the values behind them. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If our political views are shaped by deeper moral instincts, then where do those instincts come from? And how do they evolve through experience? In the next chapter, we'll explore how our righteous minds develop and how nature and nurture shape the way we see the moral world. Chapter 8. The Conservative Advantage. Why do conservative messages often resonate more deeply with voters, even in diverse or unpredictable situations? In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt offers a surprising insight. Conservatives may have a strategic advantage in political and moral communication, not because they're more moral, but because they draw from a wider range of moral foundations. As discussed earlier, Haidt's research identified 6 key moral taste buds: care, fairness, loyalty, authority, sanctity, and liberty. Here's what the data shows. Liberals tend to focus heavily on care, fairness, especially fairness as equality, and liberty from oppression. Conservatives, meanwhile, tap into all 6 foundations more evenly, including loyalty, authority, and sanctity, which many liberals often overlook or undervalue. This broader moral palette allows conservative messages to activate more emotional and intuitive responses in a wider audience. Haidt illustrates this with examples from political speeches and advertisements. Conservative narratives often invoke family, nation, God, tradition, and honor, all powerful triggers for the moral taste buds tied to group unity and moral order. Importantly, Haidt doesn't claim conservatives are more moral, only that their messaging tends to be more morally pluralistic, making it more persuasive across diverse populations. He also reflects on his own journey, how his liberal academic background made him blind to certain moral values until his research forced him to confront a broader moral reality. As a leader, if you limit your communication to only 1 or 2 moral foundations, you limit your impact. To truly unite, inspire, and lead diverse people, you must learn to speak the full moral language of humanity, even the parts that don't come naturally to you. Understanding perspectives you may have once dismissed isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If conservatives have an advantage in moral messaging, then what's the deeper evolutionary reason behind these foundations? And how did they help humans survive and thrive as a species? In Part 3, Chapter 9, we'll explore how morality evolved, not just to protect individuals, but to bind groups together and help them compete. Thanks for listening. If you're finding value in this audiobook summary, make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Code, where we help you lead with purpose and live with gratitude. Part 3. Morality Binds and Blinds. Chapter 9. Why Are We So Groupish? Human beings are social. But we're more than just social. We're groupish. In this chapter, Jonathan Haidt explores a powerful evolutionary insight. We didn't just evolve to survive as individuals. We evolved to thrive in groups. And this groupish nature is the foundation of our morality, our cooperation, and even our conflicts. Unlike most animals, humans are uniquely capable of forming large, cooperative groups of unrelated individuals. This groupish behavior gave our ancestors a huge evolutionary advantage. Tribes that were more cohesive, more cooperative, and more morally unified were more likely to survive and outcompete others. Haidt introduces the concept of multi-level selection. Evolution doesn't only operate at the level of individuals competing with each other. It also works at the group level, favoring tribes that work well together. This helps explain why humans evolved complex moral systems, rituals, and sacred values that promote group cohesion and loyalty. A striking example Haidt gives is how sports teams, religious rituals, military units, and national ceremonies often create feelings of unity and belonging. What he calls the Hive switch. When this switch is activated, we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We cooperate more, sacrifice more, and even feel more alive. But here's the double-edged sword. The same instincts that bind us to our group can also blind us to outsiders, fueling tribalism, polarization, and moral conflict. As a leader, understanding our groupish nature is crucial. The most effective leaders know how to ignite belonging, inspire collective purpose, and create a sense of shared identity, while also guarding against the dangers of us versus them thinking. If you can harness our groupish instincts for unity instead of division, you'll unlock a deeper level of influence and impact. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If groupishness evolved to help us cooperate and compete, then how does morality actually function like a tool for group survival? And what makes it sacred? In the next chapter, we'll explore how morality binds and blinds, and why that's both a strength and a danger for leaders and societies alike. Chapter 10. The Hive Switch. Have you ever felt completely lost in a crowd? In the best possible way? Maybe during a concert, a religious service, a sports match, or a moment of shared purpose, when you stopped feeling like an individual and became part of something greater. That experience, Jonathan Haidt explains, is the Hive Switch. In this chapter, Haidt explores a fascinating part of human nature. We are not just self-interested creatures. We are also deeply wired for group transcendence. At times, we can flip a mental switch that makes us feel fused with a group, causing us to behave more altruistically, loyally, and even heroically. Haidt draws on neuroscience, psychology, and anthropology to show how this switch is biologically real. For example, oxytocin promotes bonding and trust, especially with people in our own group. A chants, rituals, and synchronized movement, like marching, dancing, or singing, can activate the Hive switch and enhance group cohesion. Even experiences with psychedelics or awe-inspiring nature can reduce the ego and open us up to unity with others. He calls this transformation self-transcendence, a powerful state where we lose the boundaries of the self and become deeply connected to something larger. But there's a catch. The Hive switch doesn't just bring out our best selves. It can also make us more tribal, more suspicious of outsiders, and more vulnerable to us versus them thinking. That's why it's a double-edged sword. It binds us, but it can also blind us. Great leaders know how to activate the Hive switch for good, by creating shared purpose, unity, and moral elevation. But wise leaders also stay aware of its dark side, the potential for groupthink, blind loyalty, and exclusion of others. Use it to inspire, not to divide. Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If the Hive switch helps us transcend the self and feel part of a group, then how exactly does morality evolve to bind groups together? And how does it both build communities and fuel conflict? In the next chapter, we'll uncover how morality binds and blinds, and what that means for leadership in a divided world. Chapter 11. Religion is a team sport. When you think of religion, what comes to mind? Do you see it as a personal journey, a search for truth, meaning, or connection with the divine? That's part of it. But in this chapter, Jonathan Haidt reveals another side of religion, one that's often overlooked. Religion is a team sport. Across cultures and throughout history, religion has not just been about individual beliefs or private spirituality. It's been a powerful social glue, binding people together into cohesive, cooperative groups. Haidt explains how rituals, sacred symbols, shared stories, and moral codes help form tight-knit communities that survive, thrive, and outlast less cohesive ones. This ties back to the Hive switch from the last chapter. Religions activate this switch through collective worship, synchronized rituals, and moral commitment, helping people transcend their self-interest and commit to the group. He references the work of Emil Durkheim, who saw religion not as irrational, but as a deeply functional force that reinforces social bonds and fosters moral behavior. And it's not just belief that matters, it's belonging. Haidt argues that religious communities often provide structure, support, accountability, and meaning, making them powerful tools for group survival and moral development. Even atheist or secular groups can function this way when they create ritual, purpose, and shared values. But religion's groupish nature also means it can divide humanity, reinforcing boundaries between us and them. So again, morality binds and blinds. Strong leaders understand the power of shared purpose, ritual, and moral unity. Whether in a company, classroom, or community, creating meaningful culture is essential. The goal is to build a moral community that uplifts, unites, and sustains, not one that excludes or oppresses. Ask yourself, what stories, rituals, or values are shaping the culture you lead? Let's think of an answer to this question to lead to the next chapter. If religion evolved to help groups survive, what about morality itself? Could it be that morality isn't just about being good, but about being group-focused and competitive? In the next final chapter of this book, we'll explore how morality binds and blinds, and why understanding that truth is vital for anyone who leads. Chapter 12. Can't we all disagree more constructively? In a world fractured by ideology and overwhelmed by outrage, Jonathan Haidt closes The Righteous Mind with a challenge and a hope. What if we could learn to disagree without division? What if we could stay curious, not furious? In this final chapter, Haidt urges us to move beyond self-righteousness and tribal thinking. He reminds us of a hard truth revealed throughout the book. We are not purely rational beings. We are moral creatures, shaped by intuition, emotion, group loyalty, and deeply embedded worldviews. And yet, we're not doomed to division. This chapter offers a way forward, a path toward constructive disagreement, intellectual humility, and personal renewal. When we believe our reasoning is flawless and our moral compass is superior, we become blind to our biases and closed to other perspectives. But when we recognize that our minds are designed more for justifying than for seeking truth, we unlock a powerful opportunity. We can pause, reflect, and grow. Instead of fighting to be right, we can strive to understand. Real-life application. Haidt challenges us to adopt what he calls a habit of self-renewal, investing regularly in our physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual well-being. This includes engaging with people who think differently than you, not to win arguments, but to expand your view. Have lunch with a colleague from the other political aisle. Read books that challenge your assumptions. Cultivating humility. Notice your inner lawyer. Then ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Building moral empathy. Listen to understand, not to reply. Strengthening your own hive, whether it's your team, community, or organization, by fostering belonging, trust, and shared values. Actionable steps you can start today. 1. Pause when triggered and ask, is this my elephant reacting? 2. Seek out one meaningful conversation this week with someone who disagrees with you, and just listen. 3. Reflect on your moral taste buds. Which foundations matter most to you? Which ones are you overlooking in others? These small steps can lead to profound shifts in your leadership, your relationships, and your personal growth. Final leadership reflection. True leaders aren't those who shout the loudest. They're the ones who listen deeply, think clearly, and bring people together. They create spaces where people can disagree without dehumanizing each other. That's not just a skill, it's a legacy. Thanks for listening. If you found value in this audiobook summary, please consider subscribing to the Leadership Code. We deliver powerful book summaries, timeless leadership insights, and life-changing discussions, designed to help you become the person and leader you're destined to be. Hit that subscribe button now and join us on the journey of continuous growth and transformation.